Story 1. So, my husband gets out of work at 5:30 p.m. and gets home between 5:36 p.m. and 6 p.m. Sometimes my kids are still eating dinner. Last week I'm getting a head start on dishes, and my kids are still eating dinner. I hear the dogs go off, hear his truck door. A few seconds later, he does his distinct throat clear and tells the dogs to quiet down. Comes in the door and says hi to the kids. They say hi back. I turn and smile, and he goes upstairs to go to the bathroom. I look at the clock and at 5:40 p.m. He never comes back through. I go outside and smoke a cigarette and notice his stuff isn't at the table where he throws it after work. Whatever. So, I go upstairs after my cigarette and go to look at the bathroom door. The light is off and the door open, it's empty. I go check the bedroom, nothing. Ask the kids. They said he was probably in the bathroom. I said that I had checked and he wasn't there. The kids can see every door leading outside from the dinner table. I go back upstairs and check the rooms. He's not there. I look out a window to the driveways and his truck isn't out front. So ask the kids if they saw him leave, but they didn't. I said he's not here anymore, and all the kids looked confused and start exchanging weird looks. At 5:50 p.m., the dogs start barking and I hear his door. I hear his keys hit the table outside and he walks in and says, "Hi." Then he goes to the bathroom. My kids and I look at each other weird, but don't say anything. When he gets out of the bathroom, I asked where he went. He had a confused face and asked what I meant. I tell him what I told you guys so far, and he looks at the kids and said he was just getting home. The kids said they saw him and talked to him, and so did I. He made the face, and all the kids just looked disturbed. I told them all it was just a time glitch. It was the weirdest time glitch I've experienced because there were witnesses, my kids, and we interacted with him. Thought you all would be interested in this one. I experience a lot of weird, but I only like to retell the stories with witnesses. Story 2. This is a story that haunts me daily. This happened in 1992. I had just graduated high school and was working in a warehouse. I kinda enjoyed it and settled thinking I will probably retire here. Yup. I had zero ambition. I was a sad, lazy, cringe-inducing shitbag. A new guy started. It's a warehouse with high turnover, so nothing unusual about new guys. And everyone asked if we were related because we looked alike. He was probably late 30s, early 40s, and I was 18 at the time, and he was fatter. He seemed to carry himself like me the way he walked and spoke. His second day we worked together on a wrapping station, and the first thing he said to me was, "You still have that Penthouse magazine under your mattress." I did. Weird but totally normal for teen boys, I suppose. He then said, "I know everything about you. You are worried about never getting a girlfriend." I was floored, but I again thought it was a usual teenage thing. I mean, I wasn't the best looking guy, so I guess it wasn't a stretch to guess. Probably the start of bullying, and the end of my job, as one thing I like most about myself is that I have no problems fighting anyone, anywhere, anytime. No matter how big or how many, I was always down. I never won but could take a beating, and the person usually quit and never messed with me again. I asked him why he was saying all this shit, and he looked at me and his expression is seared into my mind and left an image I see daily. He said, "I am you." He then went on to tell me everything about myself. I mean, my deepest, darkest secrets that no one knows. Then he kept telling me more about myself. Then we went to lunch, and we're outside smoking, and yup, same brand Camel Wide regulars. Hard to find where I lived, so I never seen anyone else smoking them. I asked him to be serious and how he knew all this shit. He said, "I already told you, Tom Thawk." Tom Thawk is a nickname only one person called me, and he was my dad's friend I barely saw. A crappy Jetta pulled into the parking lot, and he said that's our girl. She is a demon who is horrible to us. I asked him why he is with her, and he said she is the best we could do. When she got out she was disgusting looking, I mean trailer trash would be too kind, and she waddled her ass over to us. She said, "Let's go." Before he left he stared right into my soul and said, "We deserve better, please go to college and stop being lazy and make something out of yourself." Trailer park girl just kinda laughed like, "Yeah right." He left with her, and I never saw him again. I think I ran into a younger version of her at a friend's house years later, and he introduced me and said we should hook up. I said no. I went to college and stopped being a pathetic, lazy cringe fest. I accomplished everything I set out to do, as I always felt the need to not let him down. I know none of this makes sense. How can I explain something that I can barely understand myself? None of it makes sense whatsoever, like why would a future me get a job with me? He had to fill out a job application and have his references checked, right? Yes, I asked my manager, who was a POS who just told me to mind my own damn business and focus on my job and to try to be less of a screw-up. Has anyone had something like this happen to them? It's haunted me daily since. I am 48 and have not seen any time travel machines. Help me out here, maybe end this once and for all. Please tell me your experience. Story 3. I really don't know where to start with this. I'm going to try to give every single detail I remember. It happened this morning, so it's not like it was that long ago. I've been looking up things online basically all day trying to find some sort of solution to this, but I really truly feel that I'm losing my mind. I can't find anything. And believe me, I've looked. The closest thing I could find was a link to a post from like 3 years ago in this subreddit that really had nothing to do with my problem, but I'm going to tell the story here in hopes that someone can tell me what the hell happened. I don't really have a history of any prior mental health issues. I had ADHD as a kid and went through a small cycle of depression years back, but that's about it. I've always been a late riser. This whole corona situation has me working from home, so that allows me basically a sleep schedule of my choosing. When I woke up this morning, it was probably closer to noon. The family wasn't home. This isn't strange, as most of the time the old lady and the kids are off doing their own thing by the time I wake up. But when I went to go make a bagel, I saw that the back door was open. I thought maybe she had taken the kids out back to play, so I went to look, but nobody was there. I kind of scoffed at her under my breath for leaving the door open. The bugs are pretty bad, and closed it. But immediately after turning around, after closing the door, I saw that across the living room the front door was open too. I could see through the wide open front door that both cars were in the driveway, so I went to go see if they were out front. Nope. This made me a bit nervous as both cars were in the driveway, and both doors were left wide open. I started assuming the worst. Across the street, I saw our neighbor's front door open as well. We are very close with our neighbors. The dad is a childhood friend of mine, and the kids have known each other since they were born pretty much. So I just walked over and went in the front door, thinking my family was probably over there. Nope. Not a damn trace. Obviously at this point I started getting panicked. I couldn't find my family, all my doors were open, and my neighbor's house was in the same exact state. All of their cars were parked as well. I went to walk back across the street to get my phone, and I noticed the house next to mine had their front door wide open too, and the one on the house on the other side. This is when I lost my shit. I felt like I was in a goddamn horror movie or something. I looked down the street and every single front door I could see was open, and not a damn soul could be found. I went back inside into my room to get my phone that was charging from the night prior, and as soon as I pull it off the charger and unlock it, I hear the front door open and my wife and kids' muffled voices. I sprint to the kitchen to find my wife with bags of groceries in her hands. She just tells me to help her unload them. I ask her where the hell her and the kids have been, and how they even went anywhere without taking one of the cars, and she looks at me like I'm stupid. Tells me she took her car, and she's been gone for like an hour. I explain to her the entire story, and she still just looks at me like I'm stupid. Asks me if I'm sure it wasn't a dream. I am positive I was not dreaming. Absolutely positive. She tells me she believes me, and that we can look into it, but I could tell she really didn't. Who can blame her? Typing all this and going back to read it, I sound like a lunatic. But I don't know where else to tell this story or anyone else who will really listen to me. I think I'm going crazy. Story 4. To cut the long story short, I had been asleep for 3 days due to a head injury that I sustained in my home. In those 3 days, I have lived to be 21 years old. It's very difficult to explain, but here's how it goes. I was a Caucasian Filipino boy living in Manila. I had 2 siblings and had a single mother. I was also an athlete. I was a scholar in college due to the fact that I was a great one. My sport was track and field. Everything seemed so real. I had family members who loved me and would tell me stories of how I was as a child, how they would talk to me in my mother's womb. I remember speaking to them in the Filipino language, and now I cannot even understand what the words mean. I would also browse Reddit in my free time. What gives me chills is that I have also subscribed to this exact thread. And in my time in the Philippines, the year and the date is the same as it is now. It is only delayed for a day because I am now back to being a 29-year-old Mexican boy. I also had a girlfriend, my first girlfriend, and I was madly in love with her. I remember courting her and eating at malls with her in Manila. What is also driving me crazy is when I searched online for the malls that we've been to, it all exists. Even the restaurants. I remember losing my virginity to her and going to places with her. I also remember having fights with my brother. fights with strangers when I go to clubs. The pain is very real, and I had 4 best buddies who would always smoke weed with me. I graduated in high school and had a pet cat. Everything was fucking real. I also had fucking dreams, and I talked to my friends about death and if God existed. We were Catholics, and it was a very conservative country. Everything was fucking real. Until one time, I was drinking with my buddies at a bar when we got in a fight. There was this dude who hit me in the head, and everything went dark. I woke up with a very painful neck and the most painful headache I have felt. I was in the hospital. The first person I saw was my sister and my cousin. They told me that I was unconscious for 3 days. During this time I was having a panic attack because I was so confused and terrified and was thinking if it was because of the medicines inside my body or what. I was just discharged 4 days ago, and I am now having suicidal thoughts. I cannot tell reality from fiction anymore. I want to tell my family about it, but I don't think they're the type to believe and would generally disregard it. I do not know what to do, and I do not know what happened. There is more I want to say, but I can't really put everything into words. Everything was real, and now everything is real again. Story 5. This happened to me back in 2013. My youngest brother had suddenly passed away, and it was pretty recent. This was on a Saturday, about a week after his passing. When he died, his cause of death was ruled a pulmonary thromboembolism. My mom had died of exactly the same cause in 2009, also unexpected death. After my brother's passing, I started to get a strong feeling that maybe these 2 deaths were somehow related, and their cause of death were not a coincidence. I told this to 1 or 2 people, but neither paid much attention to what I said. So anyway, that Saturday I woke up quite early for me, and for a Saturday, around 7:30 a.m., I was uneasy. Back then I owned an iPhone, and as I decided I would get up and stop tossing and turning in my bed, I did what I do every day. I grabbed my phone to check the time, messages, etc. At the very top of the phone where the battery level, internet and mobile service are indicated, and which BTW are always still, as in those indicators do not move, I clearly saw the following message: check your DNA. I was really surprised to say the least. I touched that part of the screen, blinked, and yes, the message was gone. Oh well, I must have imagined it, I thought. But still, something seemed off. I went to the kitchen, and I received a WhatsApp from a childhood friend who I hadn't had contact with for over 20 years. The message said, "Hi, I just heard about your brother and your mother's passing. I'm really sorry for your loss, but I do not think these deaths are coincidental, and I would like to run some DNA tests on you." I was floored. Could this have been a strange coincidence? A glitch in the Matrix? A hallucination? I have never made this story public until now. Story 6. I was watching a Reddit video on YouTube today about glitches in the Matrix when I came across the story of a user that said their teacher had once told them that if you ask the universe for something, it will give it to you. This caught my attention because I had been looking for a very important set of papers for days, and I just couldn't find them anywhere. I even hurt myself moving my couch in case they had fallen under it, but there was nothing. So, I stopped the video and watched my phone to see that it was around 3:50 p.m., 10 minutes before my study group had a session. I wasn't even going to join them because I didn't have the papers to study from. So I thought might as well give it a try, and ask the universe to guide me to the papers if it was my destiny to pass my college admission exam. I start walking around my room, and for some reason I open my closet, knowing that there's no way the papers could be there because I only keep clothes and nothing else in there. But then I look under a box of shoes, and there was a freaking plastic bag with all my papers. Turns out my grandma had put them there weeks ago without telling me. In the end I got kind of spooked about it, but I was able to join my study group, so I'm kind of excited about it, especially because I really want to get into that university, and I took it as a signal that everything will be okay. If you've lost something, try it. Story 7. In February 2020, I was snowmobiling for the first time. My BF at the time was driving all day and finally let me drive at the end of the trip. We had been dating for 2 months, and this was our first trip together. I'm going around the last bend, and I accidentally floor the snowmobile instead of pushing the brake. I go flying off a cliff and end up 50 feet down. The snowmobile is on top of me, upside down, still running with the bottom part spinning. My helmet has flown off, and my head is 1 inch from a tree. I am terrified. My BF managed to roll off the back at the last minute, and is trying to save me, but the snow is really deep, and he's having a hard time getting down the steep cliff. My legs are fully submerged in snow with the snowmobile on top, and I'm not sure if I'm paralyzed. He calls for help, and all these men run down to save me. When they finally pull me out, I can stand, and it's the happiest moment of my life. I'm not paralyzed. I don't have so much as a scratch on me. Do I have a concussion? Maybe it's hard to say. The snowmobile also miraculously has minimal damage. Only the little plastic windshield part is cracked. In hindsight, this moment is where everything changed for me. But you have to understand, I didn't piece this together and come to this realization until months later. These are the differences. There was suddenly a pandemic. Everything was shut down within a few days. In my old timeline, there was a virus going around, but it had only impacted a few people and was similar to a norovirus or flu, not big enough to be worried about. I had a different job. At the time, I chalked it up to the pandemic. We were on the trip because I was about to start a new job. I had signed the contract and I knew what the role entailed. I was going to start the Monday after. But after the crash, I couldn't get a hold of my new boss for 9 months, and he finally told me I got the job in November, even though I had accepted it in February. He also comments how I've never been into the office when he gave me a tour in January 2020, and we spent the day together. The role I'm in is completely different than the papers I signed. My loving, awesome boyfriend was physically abusive for the first time that night. He got blacked out and attacked me, choking me. He was crying the next day, and nothing like this had ever happened before. I thought he was traumatized from the crash and let it go. That was another thing that was different. I would have never let that go before. I come from a loving childhood where my dad was my best friend always. I would have never put up with that before the crash, and was shocked I did. In the old timeline, I was on a low dose of Effexor, Xanax, and blood pressure medication. I don't take any medication at all this timeline. Over the next year, a series of weird things that don't make any sense keep happening to the point I start to feel suspicious. I all of a sudden have an incurable disease I didn't have before. I'm in pictures I have no idea what the context is. I'm wearing clothes I don't own anymore. My friends have memories of me I don't share, and I'm getting more and more depressed. BF keeps physically abusing me, and I can't get out of it. I have no will to save myself. I just keep thinking, this can't be my life. This isn't my life. It just felt like I wasn't supposed to be here. And I finally look at Reddit and realize that I died in the snowmobile crash, and this is an alternative timeline I'm in. I start to just agree with friends when they say, remember when you said this is that, and we went here and did this, but I have no recollection. My CAT scans are normal at this point after visiting the ER. To be honest, I wasn't the most observant person to begin with. A new couch could be in the living room for days, and I wouldn't notice. So when all the stores and shops are different in one area of town, I don't know if that was always there or new. I finally work up the nerve to tell my sister, who is surprisingly supportive. She asks what else is different. There was this song in the other timeline. It was a very popular song by a Shania Twain or Sheryl Crow type. Anyone would know it. I sing it to her with the lyrics, and tell her we always used to listen to it growing up. She has no recollection of it. I type the words into Google. The song doesn't exist here. The longer I'm in this timeline, the more I forget the words and melody of the old song. Also, there was no iPhone 13 in the other timeline because Steve Jobs was superstitious and it was supposed to go from iPhone 12 to iPhone 14. I notice little glitches like that are stupid and don't matter. How do I feel about it now? I've accepted my new reality. I feel bad for my sister and parents in the old timeline that they're dealing with my death in a freak snowmobile accident. But there's nothing I can do. Trying to find them again would be like trying to walk from Canada to Australia with no map. Impossible and a waste of time. I'm just making my reality the best I can now. It clearly for some reason wasn't my time to die. I mean to the point of going to the afterlife if there is one. So I should do something important if I can. Story 6. So random and bizarre, and I can't wrap my head around it. My husband made pizza rolls for our kids. I got them out of the oven and on plates. Each plate had 10 pizza rolls, and walked over to set my daughter's, who is 6 years old, plate on the table. She's autistic, mostly only relevant BC of her reaction, and was excitedly jumping up and down by the table, and I happened to stumble and 2 pizza rolls fell of the plate, falling towards her, so she reached out to catch them, and before our eyes they just vanished right before she caught them. Totally gone, not even in a blink. Eyes were wide open, and they just disappeared like a magic trick. I thought maybe they didn't actually fall off and we both just panicked and thought they did, but there was only 8 on the plate now, so clearly they did. We stared at each other for a moment and she said, "Wah, what?" I was speechless for a moment, then was like, okay, they couldn't have just disappeared. So we looked under the table, all over the room, Finally, I call my dogs and screw it. Even if they eat them, I just want them found. Nothing. And they would 100% find them if they were there, and they're not even sniffing around like food had recently been there. They're just gone. And my daughter is so pissed, lol. Enough that I made her a couple more lol, but WTF? I've never experienced something like that, at least not literally in front of my eyes, and the fact my daughter saw it too. She's literally still moving everything in the room around 20 minutes later because, well, how was that possible? She wants an explanation, but I've got nothing. Story 7. English isn't my first language, so sorry for the grammar. This happened back when I was in high school, but I just can't stop thinking about it. When I was in high school, I used to take wrestling classes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Would start at 6 p.m. and end 8 p.m. Even though it started at 6, I would always be there by 5:30. A few more people would come, and we would just chill in the park nearby. So, one day I went to my wrestling class by 5:30. It was kind of weird because I was the only one there. I just sat alone and waited all other people to show up. By 6 p.m. I was still the only person, but I decided to go inside and start the class, but when I entered there was absolutely nobody. It was really weird. All the lights were on, but there was nobody inside. I got outside and decided that I would wait a bit longer. At around 6:40 p.m., I got a call from my older sister saying that I should come back home. Also, she said, "There is someone following you. Do not take the way by the kindergarten. Come near the supermarket and walk home from there." And then the hang up. There was actually someone standing there and staring at me. I started walking back home, and the guy started following me. As my sister said, I went near the supermarket and then walked home. By the time I was near the supermarket, the guy went back and stopped following me. I rang the doorbell and my older sister, the one who called me, opened the door with shock on her face, said, "Why you came so early? I thought you had the wrestling class." When I said that I came home, "Because you called me," she said she never called me. I took my phone to show her the call history. She was right, there was no call from her. I did not think about it too much, though it was an error with the phone, and my sister was just joking with me. 2 days later, I went to the next wrestling class. This time everything was normal. By 5:30 everyone was there. And I asked the guys why nobody came last time. They all said that everyone was there. I was the only person who missed the class. I could not believe it, so before the class started I went to my wrestling teacher and asked him the same question. He said that everyone was there by 6 p.m. and I was not there. He said he tried to call me, but he was not able to reach me. He wanted to call my parents, but he did not have their number. I still cannot understand what happened that day. What had really happened that day? Story 8. Years ago, when I was around 18 and lived with my parents, I was sitting in the living room chatting with my mom and sister. My dad had gone out to play pool a few hours earlier. We heard the back door open, which was not visible from the living room, and continued to chat as we assumed it was my dad coming home. As soon as we heard the footfalls of the person inside the house walking toward the living room, we all paused and stared at each other, confused. My dad was a tall, heavy man and had very distinctive footfalls, and these were different. They did not have the same weight or pattern. My immediate thought was, did Dad invite someone over? Even though that's not something he ever did. As the footsteps got closer, we heard a man's voice call, "I'm home." And I looked to my mom and sister, who both seemed as concerned as I was. The voice sounded nothing like my dad's or like anyone's voice we recognized. I don't think he could sound like that if he tried. I can't describe it other than that it was a completely different voice, someone else's voice. My mom stood up, shaken, just as my dad rounded the corner into the living room. We just stared at him in shock. "Dad, was someone else in the house?" I asked, and he gave me a puzzled look and asked what I meant. My mom then asked, whose voice was that in the house? We asked if he's speaking in some kind of different voice, and he, baffled, said no, there was no one else in the house, and he was speaking in his normal voice. It has unsettled my mom, sister, and I ever since. It's hard to convey over text, but it was an entirely different person's voice. If it was only me who was there, I would have doubted myself, but we all had the exact same experience. It was like the universe got confused and assigned the wrong person, but corrected it at the last second. We still talk about the time that Dad came home, but it wasn't Dad. Story 9. This was a few years ago. I was sitting in the back seat of a full car, looking out of the window. It was nighttime and everything was normal. I hadn't been drinking or smoking, I wasn't tired, and I don't take medication. There weren't many stars to look at because we were just outside the city in the suburbs, so I was just staring at passing buildings. Then everything became brighter, and I had this horrible feeling of helplessness and dread that pierced me so deep it made my bones ache. So I looked up at the sky and saw this massive comet/meteor thing screaming across the sky. It was flaming yellow-orange, but mostly green, and it looked really close. Like inside the atmosphere close, T-minus 30 seconds to impact close. I only saw it for 2 seconds before it disappeared behind a building and didn't come back out the other side or crash into the earth. Then everything went back to normal. Even the feeling of dread was gone. But I was still freaking out because I saw it. I felt the horror at its inevitable collision with the earth. But when I asked everyone else in the car, no one else did. Not even the person in the passenger seat in front of me, who was also looking out of the window. They all thought I was playing a prank. All of it was weird, but the part that really gets me is that's the most frightened I've ever felt in my entire life. But the feeling was only there for 2 seconds, and then it was gone completely, just like the green flaming thing. I don't have any explanation for this, and it haunts me all the time. It was such a horrible feeling, and no one believes me. I don't even know what it could be. A vision of the future, past even? Maybe just a glitch. Maybe space and time folded, and I saw something floating in space, light years away from Earth. Whatever it was, fuck that. Story 10. This happened when I was around 18 or 19, but I remember it vividly because of how jarring and confusing it was. I've had a few odd experiences with dreams, but nothing in the middle of the day like this. So when this happened, I was still living at home with my parents, and we lived in my childhood home. This home was pretty much all I ever knew, as we moved there when I was 3 years old. I had a habit of going on daily walks in the nearby park, something I did nearly every single day since I was 14 or 15 years of age up until I moved out. It was the summer, around 1 or 2 p.m., and I went to leave the house for one of my walks. I slipped my shoes on and went to open the door as usual, but when I stepped out of the house and looked up, my neighborhood felt completely wrong. It didn't look different. Everything looked exactly the same as it usually did. The small ravine next to our house, the tree in the front yard, the steep driveway, and our neighbors' houses. All of it looked completely normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something really wrong and different with it all. It felt as if reality was warped or something. I stood on the front porch for a minute or so trying to figure out what felt so incredibly wrong with my neighborhood. After a while, though, I figured I was just being silly and made my way down the driveway. When I was about halfway down, my neighbor, who was tending to his garden across the street, looked up towards me, stared at me as if he saw a ghost, his face going completely pale, and opened his mouth to speak. Before I could even stare at him in confusion, before he had gotten a single word out, I was back inside my house at my front door about to leave. I was completely shaken. I had no idea how I had ended up back in my front door. I had no idea what I just experienced, and when I pulled the door open, it was completely normal. Nothing felt wrong anymore. It was all glaringly normal. The only difference was when I opened my door again, my neighbor was not out front gardening. I decided not to go for a walk that day. Years later, I have no idea what I experienced, and as weird as it sounds, the part that freaks me out the most is how wrong my neighborhood felt despite looking exactly the same. So between the weird teleportation back indoors and my neighbor acting as if he was staring at a ghost, the feeling of wrongness is the thing that bothers me the most. I don't know how to explain it. I didn't feel unsafe. It didn't feel like dread. It just felt like I was looking at a completely different version of my neighborhood at that moment, and I don't think I will ever forget it. Story 11. Yesterday at 5 p.m., I was playing the new OG map game mode on Fortnite while sitting in a Discord call with my friends. Suddenly, I received a missed phone call from a number with no caller ID. Usually, I don't answer calls from unfamiliar numbers, but I was expecting a call from a job I had applied for. Thinking it might be them, I decided to answer. Upon answering the second call from the same, no caller ID number, I asked, "Hello?" The loud gunshots and SFX from Fortnite made it hard to hear at first, so I removed my headset to listen better. The female voice on the other end sounded like my girlfriend, and her tone seemed offended when I asked who it was. To confirm if it was her, I inquired about the caller ID, and the response matched how my girlfriend would react if she was genuinely confused. She asked to come over, suggesting a Lyft instead of Uber because of a $5 discount I had for the Lyft ride, and also we share the same Lyft and Uber accounts. Despite being surprised by the accurate details, something felt off, especially since she didn't know the driver was even close by. Slightly suspicious, I bought the Lyft but then hesitated when she asked for the money instead so she can buy it herself. This led me to consider a potential AI scam, and so I canceled the ride. especially since she had mentioned not wanting to come home with me earlier that day. Upon calling my actual girlfriend, she denied making any calls, leaving me puzzled. The bizarre encounter left me contemplating the idea of alternate realities intersecting due to her very accurate responses, as no other explanation seemed plausible. Perhaps in a different universe, or just an AI scam trying to get money from me. It was too coincidental though, and someone would have to be stalking me to know those things. I do think it's possible though that higher versions of ourselves exist with everything we desire, waiting to be manifested through the energy we create around us. Share your thoughts or similar experiences if you've encountered something similar. Story 12. It's nearly 1 a.m. and I've been scrolling through these posts for a while now, and some of them are truly captivating, and it triggered an experience that I haven't thought about in over a year, thought I'd share, as I think it fits the brief. This happened when I am 23, and my sister, F34, were 13 and 23, respectively, Saturday morning. I woke up about 10 a.m.-ish. My mom cooked me some breakfast, Scotch pancakes, and we watched an episode of Lost together, while my brother stayed upstairs playing on his PS3, probably FIFA. Around 11:30 a.m., my sister called me and asked if I wanted to meet her at my local shopping center to buy some clothes and just generally have a walk round and have something to eat. I wasn't doing anything and my friends weren't playing out, so I decided to meet her. She took a taxi there and I walked there as it's pretty close to me, or was at the time. We had a generally good time, didn't end up buying any clothes, my sister did. We had a meal at a cafe about 1 p.m. and got an ice cream each afterwards, where you buy a cone and go and make it yourself from the machine. Although, I broke the machine pin on the lever and got a bit upset because I thought I was going to be made to pay for this. But the manager came over and said it's happened a few times, no biggie. We went to Mr. Sim's old-fashioned sweet shop and bought some sweets, weighed them up, and paid for them going home. My sister ordered a taxi in, but this time, I got in, the taxi dropped me off at home, and she stayed in and went home. She was living with her friend at the time. Generally good day. I played some FIFA with my brother when I got home, ended up having a bit of an argument with him, then made up, had some supper in the evening, and watched Saturday Night Takeaway, and your generic Saturday TV. All in all, a pretty normal and uneventful day. Except this day didn't happen. At least not to anyone but me and my sister. I mentioned me breaking the ice cream machine to my mom. She thought I was joking. I explained that, at the cafe today, when we had food I broke the pin on the lever. I'll never forget the way she looked at me. She looked worried, but slightly questioning, waiting for me to say I'm joking. She said I left the house once today, and it was to go to the chip shop, to bring back egg fried rice and curry for me, my brother, and mom. And it took about 15 minutes. At no point did I leave for hours, and when I did leave, it was about 2 p.m. I remember calling my sister, panicking at this point and needing to prove that I did actually go and meet her. She answered, slightly sleepy by this point, as it was about 11 p.m. before this conversation occurred, and asked her what we did today on loudspeaker. She went through the exact same story I've just told my mom, including the ice cream machine, including what she bought, and including what sweets I got from Mr. Sim's. At this point I ran up to my room and brought the remaining sweets down to prove that I bought these today and went to the shopping center. My mom at this point had tears in her eyes, hoping I guessed that this was some prank me and my sister had conjured up. Me and my sister agreed to talk about it tomorrow, but texted me afterwards, asking if mom's alright. I said yeah, and if she's not, neither is my brother because he's promising me that at the time I was out, he was playing FIFA with me in his room. Tomorrow comes, and my sister calls me in a panic, claiming that her boss sent her home from work because she got called in yesterday instead. She said that her boss said he called her yesterday morning and asked to cover someone's shift, and she can have Sunday off, essentially just swapping a shift, which she agreed to. She said she didn't push him too much because she didn't want him to think she was mental and lose her job. To this day, our mom, brother, and even my sister's now ex-roommate are wholeheartedly convinced that the day me and my sister spent together didn't happen. She no longer has contact with her old boss, but he paid her for the Saturday, despite not working Sunday. And me and my sister can recall tiny details to each other about the day we had. Over the years this has generally drifted into the background, but sometimes gets brought up now and again, and has become something that's almost taboo to talk about in our family because of the issues it caused around the time.